last week's super, big
Yeah.
episode, and then I was like, oh no. My wife is playing her softball game. They're in the playoffs right now, so I was worried. I couldn't hear anything, and I realized because the mic was different last week, I had the gain turned all the way down. And so that's why I couldn't hear anything. So right before we jumped on was when I finally figured out why I couldn't hear my mic. Yeah. But dude, look, check it out. We both have the same idea.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same hat. Just yours is Chiefs and mine's Packers.
Mine's a Super Bowl winning hat. Yours used to be.
It used to be. Yeah. It's been a few years, but yeah.
It'll happen. What's up, Colin? Man, it's good to see you, man.
Colin.
Last week, I didn't get to see anybody in the chat because I was too far away from the computer.
Yeah.
Matthew, welcome back, man. Yeah. Are you saying that we need a Niners hat? I don't know. This is the first year, or he may be a Niners fan, but that's all the way away.
Yeah. No, I'm good. I'll pass on the Niners year.
This is the first year I've ever considered, like, maybe I would buy a different team's hat. Not Chiefs, but in baseball. Because the Cardinals have been so bad for the first time really in my life, like this bad, that I'm like, I can wear an A's hat. I could do that.
I mean, I don't know if I would go A's.
I like the colors, man. You gotta like the colors too.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have the black and green A's hat.
Yeah, I just will pass on Packers, but that's not nice. That's awesome.
You got to have a quarterback first. I mean, we'll get to that. I don't care. It's Brock Purdy. I don't trust the guy.
I know. Mr. Relevant. Okay, so this is not really anything in the notes, but I'm just curious. Brock Purdy, Stetson Bennett, what's the difference?
I mean, not a whole lot, I don't think, honestly.
Yeah.
At least Bennett won in college.
Well, part of that was because Brock Purdy didn't have good coaching. Come on.
I mean, but we've seen what Brock Purdy was. I mean, the guy somehow won the Big 12 Player of the Year and was just, mediocre.
No, I agree. And that was one of the most ridiculous awards I think I saw that year was him winning that.
Tim, what's up, buddy?
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
What a time to be back, man. So last week's episode was a lot of fun. It's great to have on some guests. And I'm already getting ready for the fantasy football. I cannot wait for the draft. Now, everyone who's listening, join us on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We would appreciate that. But also, just so you don't miss any opportunities like this, because you never know when special guests happen. And today, I do have a special guest. I didn't tell you about it, Tubby. We do. Last year's 2022 NL MVP, Paul Goldschmidt, is joining the podcast. Look at this. Look at this guy. Obviously the Cardinals are on an off day today, and we were at the Cardinals game this last week, and this is the giveaway.
Nice.
It said bobblehead.
A bobblehead.
It does bobble, but it's cool. I haven't had a bobblehead in years.
Yeah, nice. I like it, even though it is a Cardinals. It's still always nice to get cool stuff like that when you go to a game.
Oh, yeah. Well, the next day, so we were there on Friday. That was against the Rockies. They lost, of course. Saturday, we drove home, and they were playing against the Rockies again. They won that game. They played really good baseball. Starting pitching was good. And then yesterday, 1-0 against the Rockies, lost. So I don't know what happened there. And, Colin is just on it right now. You're welcome for the two players that we gave you this year with Paul DeYoung and Jordan Hicks. I hope you're happy. I hope they win
Genesis Cabrera.
Well, I mean, you could count that. I forgot about that one because he was DFA'd. That's what didn't make me think. I forgot about that, but yeah. So yeah, it's just the Cardinals almost only traded with other bird teams this year. The Rangers were the only team that they didn't. That was a bird, but everyone else is Orioles and Blue Jays.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and did you see Jack Flaherty with the Orioles this week? His first start.
Tore it up.
8 Ks is the most he's had since like 2 months. It's insane.
Yeah. Change of scenery. May have been all the kid needed.
Yeah. And he's playing for a winner, which is nice. So
yeah, that always gives you an extra motivation to play, pitch good.
Yeah. Did you see I think it was ESPN or Fox Sports or one of those? They did a thing how fast it was for the Orioles' fewest games to reach 70 wins. Because believe it or not, they have 70 wins. They only have 50 losses, but they got 70 wins. And they said what was the result of their season, like the record-wise. And they're on pace for upper 90s wins. I don't think we're ready for the Orioles to be that good. And I think, especially even with Jack Flaherty, he's not an ace, but he could potentially add a lot of depth for that team come playoff time, especially if you don't have, a Yankees team going. I think it's Orioles, it's Rangers, and Astros right now. Those are the three teams, which makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, the Orioles, the biggest thing they needed is starting pitching. I think they probably should have added another arm somewhere throughout there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't think things really materialize like some of these people thought. I mean, the whole Verlander thing, the Dodgers, the Orioles were in. I guess it was basically destined that he was going to the Astros. Then the Eduardo Rodriguez thing kind of screwed everything up. It probably drove up the asking prices for everything, because after that, it was basically, okay, it's Flaherty or Cease. Who's going? And ends up being Flaherty, and I don't know. Yeah.
How in the world is I heard why, and so it's good, but man, how does LA feel getting Vito traded so the guy could stay in Detroit? The reasoning is great. Like, it's a family thing. It's about, I heard it was about, like, hey, it's the health of his family and his marriage. That's great. Right. Awesome that he was able to do that, but no LA, no playoffs.
And then on top of that, but the thing is like, later on, it came out and he said, "Well, I asked for more. I asked for certain incentives if I went to LA instead."
Oh, I didn't hear about that part.
Yeah, and so they threw that part in there at the end, like, "Oh, well, if you give him this amount of money, guaranteed he'll come over." Which I get that some of these guys, they were on the no trade clause, and so
you can do it.
Yeah, why not? I mean, if you don't want to really play for that team, why not say, hey, okay, if you give me an extra this amount of money, I'll come play for it. And I guess the Dodgers were kind of like, no. But I think my biggest problem I have with it is that you're the Detroit Tigers. You know that they're on the list. Why wouldn't you have gotten confirmation beforehand and said, hey, are you willing to go play for the Dodgers, instead of wasting time and then go, okay, trade's done, we accept? And he's like, no.
Yeah, it's the worst possible outcome for the Tigers, which it's a business, and so too often the teams get the better end of the deal than the player. But it hurts even for the Dodgers, because now they can't go out, and they've wasted time. They're like, hey, it's happening, it's done. Like, who's going to veto this trade? I mean, they're going to be in the playoffs, and so it is pretty shocking. It sucks, but
I mean, it is what it is.
Here anyway.
And see, that's another thing that I didn't really understand. Is you can be a free agent. You decline your option. What is 2 months? I mean, 2 months. That's it. Then you got your freedom to go back to the East Coast, or go to Detroit, or wherever you want. But you have 2 months. So I mean, 2 months of possibly winning a World Series basis. Going against. Okay, well, I'll stay in Detroit and just be one of the bottom tier teams and not make the playoffs. I don't know. I mean, I get. Yeah, I get the whole family stuff, everything. Yeah, don't hold that against them. But I mean, you're at this point in your career, you're getting older. Wouldn't you want to try to win one more time?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I get that. I agree. But
yeah.
I think, it's weird how it works out, because you never think, I'd rather stay in Detroit, because Detroit doesn't have a great, reputation right now as being the livable, awesome city, destination city. But I will say, from those that have been to Detroit, they say there's a lot of cool things to it, but it's no LA necessarily.
Yeah, and the weird thing too is, though, that his family isn't even in Detroit with him.
Yeah,
they're out on the East Coast. They're out like in Boston, where he was before. So I'm like, I get his, way closer and all, but it's not like they're right there with you and you were uprooting them to take them to LA with you for a couple months.
Yeah. Did you see, have you ever looked at how close Detroit is to the East Coast? It is wild.
I mean, I imagine it being if it's up in the.
Up in Michigan, it's on the far side of Michigan, but it's like super close. It's like, I don't know, like I could be butchering this. It's like less than 90 minutes to Cleveland, and then it's like less than 90 minutes, it seems like, to Buffalo from Cleveland. Like, it's wild how far over it is. but you never think of it because I just think of it as straight Midwest. So
yeah.
It is a pretty far thing, but 2 months, and he's going to be on the road a bunch. So I don't know. It's just all over the place. It was kind of weird.
I mean, I don't blame him at all. Cool. You're doing it for your family and all that stuff. Yeah, awesome for you to stand pat on what you believe in and everything. I don't like the Tigers side of it going, okay, we're going to negotiate this without asking him if he's going to, accept a trade. And then an hour before the trade deadline comes out and he goes, oh, no, I ain't going there. Yeah. And so now the Dodgers have wasted all that time that they could have spent on possibly getting Jack Flaherty or, really working on Dylan Cease, because I guess they got really close at the end, right before the deadline, in getting Dylan Cease. And then time just kind of ran out and they didn't have that option. So that's the only thing as a Dodgers fan that I'm like, yeah, you probably should have had this discussion with Rodriguez before you guys went into discussions there. Go, okay, these are your 10 teams on your no trade list. Are you stand pat that that's it? You won't go there, or is there possibility? And yeah, it's just kind of weird that you would negotiate without knowing if the guy's would want to go there at all. It's
it's definitely put the Dodgers in a pretty tough spot, but yeah. Well, don't worry, you already have Alex Reyes with the former Cardinals pitcher. You don't need the.
He hasn't thrown a single pitch this year.
Isn't that just shocking?
Right?
Yeah, dude. It made me just super frustrated. What are you doing now?
I mean, Lance Lynn though has looked pretty rock solid to the first 2 starts. So hopefully that's all we needed was Lynn. Kershaw will be back. Urias looked good the other night. So maybe we just needed a little, revamp, and Lynn just needed to get out of the toxicity of the south side of Chicago.
Yeah, well, that's a great transition real quick. I figured before we do the actual podcast, we can do some of the baseball stuff real fast. And then don't worry, those of you that jumped in, yes, we're in the football stuff because we're going to get into all the things football. Even we're going to talk some of the NCAA football and some of the tradition that's dead, that's gone forever. And then all the former pieces. And there's more thoughts I had on that. But real quick, let's just hit some baseball stuff, and then I have 1 or 2 women's sport thing I want to just jump in there too. So, baseball, the Lance Lynn got out of Southside, just like you talked about. The Yankees have Keynan Middleton, who just said there's no good culture at all in Chicago on the South Side, where guys are falling asleep in the clubhouse, guys are missing practice, no repercussions, and so as a result is what we have now. A team that is woefully underperformed, and it makes me think, well, it is Tony La Russa's fault, but my goodness, how did they go 81-81 with no culture? I mean, they have a lot of talent, but this is still a talented team that's just terrible.
I think it just kind of explains everything that we wondered. We thought, okay, Tony La Russa, he's old, he's not really with today's game, and he just doesn't have that coaching anymore that you would hope for in a modern day coach. And now it kind of comes out like, okay, the culture is just absolutely terrible. There is none. The players basically can get away with whatever they want. Supposedly, I don't know if you saw it just maybe 30 minutes or so before we went live. Supposedly, Yasmani Grandal smacked Tim Anderson a couple times during practices and stuff like that. I guess they've got into it a few times. That just, sounds like the upper management has no control on what's going on, and honestly sounds about now that they just need to clear house on everything. Everyone.
Well, part of it is, we talked about this at the very beginning of the year. There was a trivia question I had for you. It was, what is the losingest team, in a sense of, hey, did you make the playoffs or not? In 120 years, they've made it 16 times. It's absolutely insane, and I'm not saying this goes all the way back, but this is clearly, you don't have culture now overnight. It is planted and it grows. And so I do think you're right. There's probably a lot that has to be weeded out, and just, it's going to take time. It's going to be a slow process, but they probably need to blow it up. But guys like Tim Anderson, just my goodness, Colin put it in the chat. Get away from Tim Anderson. I don't know. Jose didn't seem like he had to get away. That was the best punch I've seen laid on someone that knocked him out since Jose Bautista's.
Yeah, the Rugnet Odor Bautista. Yeah. Did you see what Jose Ramirez said? He's like, man, I've been, you guy's been talking trash, for years to us, and he's like, finally, he wanted to fight, so I obliged. And I think it's funny that Anderson gets the 6-game suspension and Jose only gets a 3. And then, did you see the Guardians, like, one of their minor league affiliates, they're having, like, specials. Like, you wear Jose Ramirez jersey, you get, like, something, get, like, a burger or something free. And if your name's Tim, you get in for free, but you have to sit out in the grass.
That's what you need to do with minor league baseball. That is great.
Yeah.
I was
like, that's
more
awesome.
Intense fights I've seen in a long time. I don't think I've seen anything like that. Like, oh my gosh, like they need to get this under control quickly.
I mean,
that makes me think of the Cardinals one.
They hockey dropped gloves and was like, let's go. I was like, oh. I saw that. I was like, oh man. Yeah.
And they just dropped too. And Tim Anderson's no slouch. Like,
no.
Dude is an athlete, and sure enough, was down.
Yeah.
Here we go. Tim says, I'll take free entry. You gotta go. You gotta check it out, man. We gotta see.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh man. Well, so obviously that was one of the teams that did sell at the deadline was the White Sox. The Cardinals was one of them. Was there a team that stuck out? I mean, we're a week past the deadline at this point, and teams that just did not stick. People that didn't get the message, didn't do enough. What did you think?
I mean, if we're talking about, team that probably should have sold, we kind of discussed this the other night. The Yankees. Yeah, the Yankees, where you're at now, then the whole Stanton, jog around third. I mean, it just, if I'm Judge out of anyone, I'm just upset because I signed back here. You didn't really do anything to get me any help offensive wise. And when I'm out, offense is absolutely gone. When I'm there, the only reason why we can win is because I'm the only offense we have. And now we got guys jogging from second around third when you should have scored easily 2 outs and you should have been busting your butt from second. It's just, I don't know. If I'm him, I'm super frustrated. And at this point, if they don't make moves, it's hard to say if Cashman should be fired, but I think at this point, I know Cashman has done a lot of great things for New York, and I just feel like the way he's building the team right now isn't setting them up to be successful with what you got in Aaron Judge, because say this goes on for another year or so, I know he just signed this big contract, he's going to want out, and if you aren't able to build around him, frustration's going to build, and I think Boone needs to go. I think Cashman probably, maybe an unpopular opinion. I know a lot of Yankee fans are ready for Cashman to go, but it's just kind of
going at it whenever they have a home game right now. And I think they definitely could have. Matt, I would love you put in the chat the Red Sox should have done something. I'm curious, would you rather them bought or sold? So if you put that in the chat, man, I think they were in a tough spot. So were the Yankees, but I think the Yankees definitely should have done more. I don't know what they were doing with the Cardinals. Like, that was almost like a locked deal for Carlson a year later. And, okay, well, now we can't get it done somehow. I'm not sure. They literally had something that they could have done, and they didn't do enough.
Yeah, and
the Marlins did more.
Yeah, and the crazy thing was, too, is that they traded for Harrison Bader last year. And now they were like, oh, well, they're trying to trade Harrison Bader, but they need a right-handed outfield bat. Well, now you're trying to trade the dude you just traded Jordan Montgomery for. Yeah. And, last year, but yet you need a right-handed bat. Where does that make sense? If you need an outfield right-handed bat, you traded for one. Yeah, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, but so you're going to trade one and then try to get one. Yeah. It's just all that situation. And then the Angels doing what they did. I get you're trying to make playoffs. You're trying to do but you shouldn't. You shouldn't have done it. I just think the odds of Ohtani staying are low. Even if they made the playoffs, Giolito gets rocked. Gives up 9 earned runs, first start with the Angels. And then they 0-6 since August, since the trade deadline. They haven't won a single game. And you gave up your 2 of your top 3 prospects to get Giolito and get Lopez, who both are on expiring contracts, and then you do a few other trades. I get what you're trying to do. I get you're trying to entice him to stay, but I think the odds were that he probably wasn't staying either way, make the playoffs, unless you made like an absolutely deep run and somehow came close to a World Series. I just don't see Ohtani staying. And so I think you probably should have tried to find a way to sell and get something for Ohtani. And now you're traded prospects for guys that probably won't be on your team next year.
Yeah, well, here, let me throw this out there. So the Red Sox, Matt, you said just buy a little, not sell the farm, but I want to make an adjustment. And I would agree that I would have rather been a buyer if I was a Boston fan too, or the team itself, because before this 4-game losing streak that they're on right now, they were 7 games over 500. Post the deadline, they were looking like they could have trended up when the Yankees were trending down. Now they're almost dead. They're a half game back from the Yankees right now, just in the win column, but. You look at this was an opportunity to come at one of those 3 wildcard spots, and you never know in the playoffs. You just got to get hot. That's exactly what happened to the Phillies last year. And so I think they could have made 1 or 2 moves to have definitely done it. And they wouldn't have gone crazy. But, I mean, they're in the same territory essentially as the Giants. We did absolutely nothing. And so it's just weird. The Diamondbacks didn't do enough either. This is your darling team that has absolutely fallen flat post-break.
Yeah.
It was even before the break, last month. They cannot get August quick enough, and August hasn't been super friendly to them either, as they're on a 6-game losing streak too. I think they should definitely. Jordan Hicks would have been one they should have gotten. Scott Barlow could have been one they should have gotten. They have no bullpen help, and their starting pitching has been feeling that as well.
Yeah, I mean they did go out and get Sewell from the Mariners, but at that point, I mean, you need multiple arms. Then on top of that, you traded one of your guys. To the Brewers, you traded Andrew Chafin to the Brewers, who was having a pretty decent year for you in the bullpen. So, yeah, that's one reason why I wish the Dodgers I wish they would have went a little bit more intense on trying to get another starting pitcher, because all the other teams in that division, in our division, didn't really try to catch the Dodgers. And you could have definitely, extended that lead and gave you a much better chance at the Braves in the playoffs. And I think you probably should have pushed harder for Flaherty, I really wanted Cease. I wasn't big on the Eduardo Rodriguez to begin with, but I was like, I'll take it because he's pitched decent this year. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I wish they would have went a little bit harder and more bullpen. It was another thing I was hoping for.
You look at the National League right now, too, and how many teams do you think have a positive run differential?
Not a whole lot of teams. I mean, I know one weird one, like the Padres. They have like a plus, 58 or something like that?
It's 63 now. Yeah.
63, yeah. Crazy. And then another Dodgers, the Braves. Trying to think of other ones. Phillies, do they have a positive yet?
Dodgers, Braves, Phillies, yeah.
Padres.
Right.
Is that it? Or is there one more? Two more?
There's only Cubs are at plus 75, very sneaky.
And but Brewers?
No, Brewers are minus 8.
Who am I missing?
It's an NL West team.
Is it?
Yep.
The Giants?
Yep.
Do they? I didn't.
Yeah, if you think about it, the Padres, the Cardinals, and the Mets combined have a positive run differential. Did you? How wild is that? None of them are closer than the Padres are the closest at 55 and 58, and then obviously the Cardinals and the Mets are minus, but not by much. It's wild to me to see that, but
yeah. I mean, you got a team like Arizona who was negative in the negative teens. And they have a better record than the Padres, who are plus 63. Mm-hmm. You look at it and you go, that math shouldn't add up.
Yeah. Real quick before, because we're going to have to transition. We had a lot of football to talk about, so we're going to have to move on. But who you picking, Reds, Cubs, or Brewers to win the division?
I mean, right now, the Cubs are looking hot.
Are they peaking too early? Remember,
there's a very good chance.
Last month.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very good chance, but at least for them, we're in August now, not July. So maybe you can, make a big push now, and you may falter when it comes to playoff time, but maybe you make that big push and you get that division win over the Brewers, who are just kind of there right now. It's still one of those that I just don't understand how they have not just completely ran away with this division, with the Cardinals being as bad as they are this year. It's still just dumb. I'm dumbfounded that they have not found a way to do something. Yeah.
I don't get it, but here we are.
No.
We'll be all right.
Yeah.
So, all right, I like your pick. I'm going to go with the Brewers just because you don't get to be this far leading this late in the year without at least doing something right besides not scoring runs. But I do like the 1-2 punch that the Cubs have on the starting pitching side, assuming Stroman does well. But I still like Steele. This is literally like the good version of a Cardinals pitching staff. So anyway, you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. You want to start college football or you want to start NFL?
I say let's get college out of the way real quick. And just do a little discussion. And then we'll just all in on the All right,
here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Welcome back, everyone, to the W Sports Podcast, live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you're following us. Please make sure you have subscribed because we are live right now. We've already got nearly 30 minutes of bonus content. Or if you came in today hoping for some baseball content, we got it for you. We do. It's over on YouTube. So we hope that you'll join us over there. But also today's episode, we're going to continue on the conversation with the NCAA football and all that is happening over the last week plus. And we're going to be breaking down the entire NFC conference as, yes, it's August. The Hall of Fame game happened. And here we are in football season. So without further ado, welcome, Tubby, to football season.
It's football season. And it's officially season 3 of the W Sports Podcast.
Season 3.
Yeah, season 3. We made it to season 3.
You know, they say 100% of podcasts don't make it as far as we have so far, right?
I'm just saying. I
may have made that up.
I think it's probably good math.
Yeah, you can't be wrong about it.
What better way to start season 3 than with the beginning of football?
I know. Can you imagine this? This time next week, it'll be August 14th, which means we're 2 weeks away from college football. 2 weeks.
Yeah. Almost there. Oh, man, I am so ready.
So, well, let's just jump in. So we talked last time. We were talking about Big 12. We talked about Colorado was joining and what that meant. We talked about the potential of an Arizona possibly following suit. And then we hit submit on the podcast. We submitted everything. And in the next 48 hours, it was like, hey, Big Ten's going to go ahead and grab Oregon and Washington. And then the Big 12 is going to grab everybody else that they could. And nobody wants Cal. Nobody wants Stanford right now. Nobody wants Oregon State or Washington State. Did I get it right? Those are the 4 that are left, right?
So you haven't heard the latest news then yet, have you?
What did I miss?
So there's, I guess, the Big 12 has had preliminary conversations with Oregon State and San Diego State.
No.
About joining the Big 12. And the biggest, unheard of, I don't understand why, but Stanford and Cal are being discussed among the ACC about joining the ACC for who knows why.
No,
but
that's dumb.
And I guess supposedly when all this started going down with Oregon and them, going to the Big Ten, there was rumors, okay, it's going to happen. Then it was like, wait, we hit pause because they don't know if they'll be able to pay the opt-out fee or whatever. So may not happen right now. And then I guess the Pac-12 commissioner went to the Big 12 commissioner and said, hey, will you take all 9 teams? We take 9 teams except for Washington State. Yeah.
Wow. What a bold move, man. Just a
petty. Yeah. It was basically like, hey, we didn't want you guys 10 years ago when we started making expansions, but will you take our guys?
Yeah, dude. And how it turns.
Yeah. So, the Big 12 right now, what they're sitting at 16 teams minus Oklahoma and them, starting next year. And so I don't know if you've seen this statistic that came up. They said that, the Big 12 has added 8 teams since Oklahoma and Texas decided to leave. And that's including Arizona State, Arizona, and Utah, and Colorado, these recent ones, that they're bringing in about $1.1 billion in revenue. Based from those
Big 12.
Those teams are bringing $1.1 billion in revenue with them. Oklahoma and Texas alone make basically $2 billion in revenue. And they're like, so you're bringing in 8 teams to replace 2 teams, but you're still losing about $1 billion in revenue.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the difference between actually being a blue blood and not. And that's my biggest thing is you got the Big 12, good for them of being on the offensive and literally just being a classic Big 12 powerhouse offense right here. And just saying, no, we're going to go score more points. We're going to put more points on the board and then see what happens. Because if you're not, you're going to be Pac-12, which is the new Big East. And the Big East is gone. And obviously the Pac-12 is going to be gone. When I told you I thought they were going to merge with the Mountain West to make that the Big West or something, like that, which would have made more sense because the Pac-12 was the one conference that said, no, we are on the Pacific Coast. We are nowhere else. And if you literally, they just would never veer off of that except, Utah was as far east as they would go. And so
you got the ACC. ACC's all East Coast.
Well, and I get that too, but even before the ACC back in the day, it was still there, but it wasn't the powerhouse that it was. It's just wild to me to think that the Pac-12 drug its feet, didn't communicate, dropped the ball with Apple TV. I don't know what they were doing with that, but you easily could have made that work. Didn't communicate effectively, and so schools are like, fine, I'm out. I'm going to go where the grass hopefully is going to be greener. Now, I would say that I'm not a super big fan of the Big 12 and the way they've handled things the last couple of years. Even back to the Big 12, the Longhorn Network, all those things that really started a domino effect of people leaving the Big 12 and then having TCU and stuff like that. But it's going to be wild to think that the ACC is probably going to land these teams and they're going to be playing coast to coast.
And to me, this makes absolutely zero sense whatsoever. If you're Stanford or Cal, or even, not even really the ACC because, it's maybe one or two, hopefully you're not one of those teams that somehow gets Cal and Stanford as road games, but you're Stanford and Cal, you possibly can only play one road game on the West Coast, or even not even in the Central time zone or the Mountain time zone. The rest of them are all going to be on the Eastern Coast, which how does that make sense? Or you as Stanford and Cal go, yeah, that sounds about right. Let's do that.
I don't, dude. So here's my big picture right now. Yes, the sad part, the biggest con about this is there's so much tradition that is lost. Nick Saban talks about it. I believe it's Nick Saban, right? There's a lot of people that talk about it, but he was one of the most prominent names that said what we all love about Saturday morning with college football. It's going away. It just flat out is, and you're still going to have those spot ones where it's OU Texas, right? You're going to have the Alabama Auburn. But the fact is that you're just not going to have a lot of these other games, and the rich are going to keep getting richer, and the guys in between are going to fall further behind. I don't think if you build it like all these teams happening, there's nothing else about it. The Big Ten and the SEC are clearly the top two. They have the big dogs. They have the most money, the biggest stadiums, the rowdiest fan bases. It's just the facts of where we're at. It's where all the money is, and so they're going to get bigger. I think this also shows that the NCAA, as a governing body, is losing its grip of what will happen. And 10 years from now, it will not look the same. The power, of who's in charge and who makes the decisions is not going to be the NCAA. It's going to be the commissioners. And I don't know how they're going to make that work and how they're going to make all the money work. But it's going to be wild. Because
every commissioner is going to want their own piece. And so they're going, I got to try to find a way to make this work. If, it's kind of wild. One thing I didn't think about is that now they're going to have to kind of go about the whole playoff situation next year as it expands, because now you can't say, you win your Power 5 and you're automatically in, because there ain't going to be Power 5 and it's only 4. And so how now are you going to integrate this in there? Because you're going to the 12 teams, you're going to have even more now SEC, Big Ten teams in there than you would have if the Pac-12 would have stayed afloat, more than likely.
Yeah.
And so now you have a possibility of having 4, maybe 5 teams, half of the spots being from one conference.
Yeah. My problem is that now with the bigger conferences, everyone's going away from the divisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need the divisions with these massive ones. Otherwise, it's just not going to make – I don't know how you're going to make it make sense, or how Iowa State's ever going to end up playing, I don't know, Colorado, or, one of these teams that they're just out of it. How is UCF ever playing Colorado, once every 4 years? They're just going to be so big. And then conferences like the SEC that are only playing 8 conference games plus 2 protected rival, or, those kind of things. You're just going to limit so much. of what we're used to. And so hopefully people are fine with it because we're going to have to get used to it. It's not going to go backwards. It's just not.
Yeah. And, and the crazy thing is, too, is that you got trying to think of all the teams off the top of my head. I know it's Florida State, Clemson, I want to say Virginia, North Carolina, and there's another team somewhere in there. Maybe Virginia Tech that have all discussed leaving the ACC. Mm-hmm. And part of that could just be more leverage going, okay, we need more revenue share than what we're getting now. That may be a big part of it. But, I mean, what happens then if, say, the 4 best teams from the ACC or the 4 biggest teams from the ACC decide to up and leave? Now you basically have 3 conferences. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's too much at this point.
And if those teams leave, what conference are they probably going to?
I mean, I would imagine
the most aggressive to go get someone else.
So I would imagine Florida State, Clemson, and probably Miami. I think that was the other team, Miami.
Yep.
The SEC is going to go hard at those 3 teams because they bring in the biggest revenue share out of all of them. They expect because football always brings in more than any other sport, and so at that point they're gonna target the biggest teams. And I know I've seen rumors that Virginia Tech, even maybe Duke join the Big Ten or something like that.
All makes sense.
Yeah, and so I mean it's just at this point you're like, when does it end? When do we say okay, enough's enough at this point? Because all the major 4, I guess, will have at least 16 teams, 18 teams, depending on, if you're the Big 10 or, now even possibly the Big 12 having 18 teams.
Yeah, the fact that the Big 12 has 18 teams, I think the best analogy so far for the Big 12 is that they added 8 teams to recuperate 60% of what OU and Texas would bring in. It is, because this is quantity over quality here, which, again, there's nothing wrong with these schools. This is great to have Utah. Utah won the Pac-12 last year. You have
2 years in a row.
2 years in a row. Thank you. And you have, pedigree, you have history, all this kind of stuff. The only difference is it'd be like the difference between adding Michigan State and Ohio State versus, Rutgers and Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not that bad. Maybe that's too mean.
I don't know. Arizona,
like the Houston and the UCF comparison.
And say Arizona State. If you're looking at it based, majority of like football, because really football is what sells the most. But if you look at it flip side, you look at it basketball wise, now you're going to have Kansas and Arizona facing against each other. 2 massive programs in basketball is different, but it's football. And this just, part of this could just be that, we're from the South. Football is king, everywhere around us. Yeah. Except for Kansas is like the only state where football doesn't, reign supreme. And so it may be different for like the East Coast guys, the upper East Coast where they don't have the big pedigree in football, especially college football and, basketball is more their thing. But, football revenue brings in so much, especially college football. And yeah, it's crazy that, so you basically, you try to put a Band-Aid over it, but yet the Band-Aid's already been used a few times, it looks like.
Yeah, definitely has. I don't know. It's going to make so I play NCAA 12 every now and then just for fun. It's just fun to go back and play an old game on the PS3, and especially if I'm craving college football. And do you know how much NCAA 14 is? Like if you find it, to buy the disc or whatever, dude, it's like hundreds of dollars because they have college football revamped. Have you seen it? So these guys, the developers or girls, I don't know who it was. Someone went in and they made it so you can download rosters, you can download upgraded graphics that the engine will allow, but it'll be like updated stadiums, updated uniforms, updated numbers, player profiles, all that kind of stuff will be on there. So that way the game looks new, it looks crisp. That's why it's like $300. It's like insane to find that game. So I still stick with the one that I had, 12 years ago. And it's worked out pretty well so far. But
waiting until next year, whenever.
Yeah, no, I'm going to pre-order that one. It's going to be incredible. Yeah, cannot wait.
Yeah,
but
I'm all in.
One of the coolest things about that NCAA 12 game is that you did have custom conferences, and so like now I'm literally like 2022 or 23, and I'm like next year I'm gonna making all these changes, and now I'm not gonna. You just can't eliminate a conference. That's the hard part. And so I'm like, well, they still got the WAC. I'm gonna have the Pac-12 on there still. It's gonna be wild. So.
There's no delete a conference button.
No, it's stupid. And there's only 120 teams instead of the 100.
So
like you don't got no judges,
33
Southerns or anything like that. So just random.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that said, next week I'm sure we're gonna have more to talk about when it comes to all of these adjustments and shifting sands and stuff. And if you guys are up for it, next week we're gonna talk about the preseason AP poll because they came in.
Oh yeah. I mean, by this time next week, we'd be talking about Stanford and Cal being part of the ACC somehow.
Of course. Why wouldn't they?
And then Wazoo be the only team without a conference after this year.
I think, yeah, and they're going to end up probably Mountain West is what I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you got to wonder why some of these other group of 5 conferences aren't reaching out more. Like, quicker, like, hey, listen, I know we don't have a lot of money, but we have a place to sleep tonight.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, and, we talked about this, about the Mountain West, and then merging. I'm like, if I was the Mountain West, I would immediately, as soon as USC and them left, and then you started catching wind that Arizona, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, all of them started leaving, I would have been like, okay, hey, it's just 4 teams. We can absorb 4 teams, and now we become a bigger conference, and we completely control the West Coast.
Yeah.
Don't have to, worry about the USC, the UCLA, stuff like that. And one more quick thing about the Oregon going to the Big Ten. I guess this is just reports from, college football, source guy, and he was talking about, I guess when USC went to the Big Ten, one of their big things was absolutely do not want Oregon in the Big Ten. Well, the new the commissioner at that point, he's not there no more. He's now the president for the Chicago Bears. And so it's a brand new commissioner, and they bring an Oregon in. I guess hasn't set well with USC because they are now going to be competing again on the West Coast for these guys with Oregon. And they'd be going, okay, well, we're going to be in the Big Ten now too also. So, hey, let's go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I guess Lincoln Riley and USC are not too pleased with the new commissioner about bringing in Oregon.
Cry some more. Maybe they'll go to the ACC. Who cares?
Jordan Stanford and Cal.
They're going to be there. It's literally going to be they're going to be playing like Northwestern, USC versus Northwestern. It's going to be November 13th or something like that. And it's going to be cold. It's going to be nasty, windy. And then USC's like, we didn't want to be there.
Yeah,
so that's why we lost. 24.
We didn't show up. They may have fired their coaching staff, lost a lot of guys, but we didn't want to be there.
We want to be there. So, well, man, I love looking at the calendar, seeing it's August 7th, because that's practically the middle of the week, or the middle. Yeah, it's practically the middle of the month, which means it's almost there. We had the Hall of Fame game. The Hall of Fame game with the Browns and the Jets, and the 2 teams that I really don't care about, but nonetheless, it happened.
Kellen Mond versus Zach Wilson, what everyone was hoping for.
DTR, man.
Yeah, DTR looked great. I mean, it was a preseason game, but hey, DTR looked pretty solid.
Yeah, and for Hall of Fame game, you never know if that one's actually going to happen. So, it's getting played with the field conditions. So, it was good that it got played. Dude, I literally forgot it was happening. I did not realize it was happening that week, and I was like, hold on, this is not a replay. This is really happening. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot.
We got real football.
I know. I was just on the mind track of, hey, road trip, going to hit St. Louis this weekend, and completely spaced it until I saw it. I was like, this is awesome. So it got me all excited. I'm looking at box scores and, who got in the game? No Aaron Rodgers. What? No. Was he even there?
Yeah, he was on the sideline.
That's what I figured. Yeah, so today what we're going to do on the podcast is going to be breaking down the NFC. And next week we'll break down the AFC, but this week all NFC teams. And this is I don't know, like a couple of years ago, this was a fully stocked conference. And I think we've had a bit of a tipping point right now with just the way quarterbacks are dispersed and the aging out of with some of these players. But I still think if you look at this team, there are some really strong contenders. But before we go into contenders, we're going to get to that here in a second. I want to know, is there one of those teams that you just, hey, they're going to get Caleb Williams?
I mean, there's a few teams that are in this discussion.
Because I think that's the other exciting part is like, hey, we could win the Super Bowl or we could lose and get Caleb Williams. And I think Caleb Williams is that guy.
Oh, yeah. Caleb Williams is definitely that guy.
I'm that guy.
I mean, you can look at, I think the Buccaneers are a situation where you go, they could lose a lot of games. Hopefully not. I want to see Baker succeed. Mm-hmm. But there's that very real possibility that they're in the bottom half of the NFL. The Cardinals, that's an interesting one with them having Kyler Murray. How long is Kyler going to be out for? I imagine they're going to have a really rough year. Do they make that decision? Okay, we trade Kyler Murray and we go with Caleb Williams and just kind of restart from here? Is another team, and then you've got Commanders. Sam Howell doesn't pan out, and then there's a few teams up north. I mean, the Packers. We don't know. I mean, we got Jordan Love. What could happen? I mean, I have
more confidence in him than some of these other guys.
Yeah, I do too. I have more confidence in than I think a lot of people do. But yeah, there's a few teams, especially in the in the NFC, where it may not be the most I mean, the Falcons are another team. I mean, Desmond Ridder, everything's kind of riding on Desmond Ridder right now, and if he doesn't succeed, they're going to be looking for a quarterback.
Have you heard his nickname?
No.
In the fantasy football world, it's Desmond Midder. Very mid. I thought that was clever. I mean, I do think what's unfortunate about the guys you just said, the teams that could get Caleb Williams, a former OU quarterback, is two OU quarterback teams with Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. So, who would you rather see succeed this year, Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield?
Oh, Baker.
Absolutely. Yeah. Come on, Baker.
I mean,
I'm really going to be going for Baker.
Yeah, it's nothing against Kyler. I mean, I love Kyler because he's an OU guy also, but Baker, he put Oklahoma back on the map.
Yeah. No, he did. Absolutely. Yeah. He's just in his passion. So I literally caught myself. This was at the last week of July. I was watching college highlight videos, like hype videos, that kind of stuff. And sure enough, I found myself a Baker Mayfield one. And I was like, golly, dude, we just didn't know how good we had it. Those were the good days.
I mean, so I mean, I hope for him, for his sake, that he does have some success and maybe finds a place to stick. I mean, great thing for him is that division is so wide open that you never know. I mean, if Baker plays like he did at the end of last year with the Rams, I think Baker played really good in a bad situation with the Rams when you have 3 of your top receivers down, 4 of your starting offensive linemen out. You got Cam Akers doesn't know if he wants to play football or if he wants to retire. All these situations. Aaron Donald's out. Jalen Ramsey was a shell of himself last year. He had all this turmoil, and he put up some really good games with some guys that wide receiver wise you didn't know. So if he can do something with you got Mike Evans, you got Godwin. I think Rashad White is going to be an explosive type running back. Maybe, just maybe, we can see Baker rewrite his history in the NFL and maybe turn something around.
Yeah, well, we can start with that division in the South, but just looking at the power rankings, which don't mean a lot, it's just on paper, it's something for us to talk about. But of the top 10 teams, 3 are from the NFC. So you're going to see a lot of this. I think that's the biggest defining characteristic of the NFC this year is we just don't know yet. It's a lot of wide open stuff, a lot of new quarterbacks over here. I mean, if you look at the NFC South as an example, Baker Mayfield, new quarterback. Carolina Panthers, new quarterback. Atlanta Falcons, still a new quarterback. Even from last year, I think he had like 4 starts or something like that. And then the Saints, new quarterback in the division, who I don't know. I would consider it a bit of an upgrade from last year, you know? So so let's look at the NFC South. If there's a team that, again, this is a tough one to pick. The Carolina Panthers, you would love to see C.J. Stroud just
Bryce Young.
That's what I meant. Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at the I literally just looked at some of the texts on my screen. With Bryce Young, is he that guy that he's just maybe not like Lawrence, but a guy that he just has that talent there, so it's just a matter of learning the system.
Yeah, I think that he has that ability, and I think this is probably the most ideal situation for him to land because they do have an up-and-coming offensive line. Ike Kawanu, I think, is going to be an incredible offensive tackle. I think that, in a year or two, we're going to be talking about him as one of the top offensive tackles in the league. And so my biggest worry for them is, do they have enough weapons for him on the outside? I mean, you bring in an Asian Adam Thielen, DJ Chark. You've got a young Terrence Marshall and Jonathan Mingo, but I think we have seen Thielen kind of fall off last year and the year before. I don't think he's that guy that he was 3-4 years ago, where he's putting up the big dynamic numbers. And DJ Chark's been someone that I think everyone's waiting for the breakout season, where he's just going to go out there and put up these big numbers, and we haven't seen it yet. And I think that's probably something we'll see again. So do they have enough around him right now to win this division? Possibly, because this division is probably the most wide open of any division in the NFL, because there's so many mediocre teams that you flip a coin and you go, oh, yep, that's who I'm taking, because at this point, I don't know if there's really a true favorite.
Yeah, I will say that they have a favorable schedule throughout the year. Like the way it starts and the way it ends, I think, are helpful for the Panthers. And I look at a team like the Buccaneers, where this is a tough schedule this year. I mean, they're going to start Vikings, Bears, Eagles. They got the Lions, and they're going to have the Bills on the road. And then the Texans on the road. So it's another rookie quarterback. So to me, that's just the hard one. So you're going to get, before Thanksgiving, you just got a lot of road games. You got a lot of tough games. And then the back half of the year doesn't finish super simple. But since thankfully for both these teams, they got 6 division games. And so they're going to get to play each other throughout the year. This is a division to me that strikes very similar to last year, where I think you could get 8 and 9 and possibly win this division. But it would be funny if they can get 9 and 8 and have no Tom Brady and win the division. I think that could be interesting to see the team this year. The Saints coming in with Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara issues or situations obviously out there as well. How are you feeling about the Saints coming into this year? I mean, is this an upgrade from last year? I mean, the better quarterback. I don't even think that should be a question.
Yeah, I think you definitely have a big upgrade in quarterback. Yeah, you can talk all you want about Derek Carr and all that stuff. He's still a solid NFL quarterback. And I think the situation with Oakland was just, Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, there you go.
Geez, whichever, direction city they're in now. We all know Josh McDaniels is not an NFL head coach. We have seen it before, and it's the same script over again. I think that whole situation, I don't know how much you can put on him. But, yeah, I think that's a big upgrade. For them, great news that Kamara only getting a 3-game suspension, nothing more. And you bring in Williams as a backup, so you got a decent backup. Kendre Miller, I think, is another good young running back that could, possibly poke his nose in there and, show up. The biggest thing for me is you lost a lot along the defensive line. Are these young players going to be able to step up and provide help for Cam Jordan on that defensive line? I'm not sure, because a couple of these guys have been in the NFL a couple of years and haven't really shown any promise whatsoever. And so there's that question. And can Michael Thomas stay on the field and help Chris Olave is a big thing, because outside of Olave and Michael Thomas, they don't have a whole lot. I guess maybe you can throw Jimmy Graham in there. He re-signed with the Saints, but you got a few questions. But for me, this is the team that I think should probably win this division, just based off of, quarterbacks do run a lot in this NFL, and Derek Carr, as of right now, is they run the NFL, not run. Oh,
I really took you literal. I was like, yeah.
No.
But either way, click on it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and so I think that he is probably, right now, and I'm not saying that Bryce Young isn't going to be better than him. I absolutely believe Bryce Young will be better than him, but at this point in time, experience, I think Derek Carr is the better quarterback for now. And Kamara only being out 3 games, I think will help. And they got a decent, favorable schedule, and I think they should win this division. But who knows?
If I was going to pick a team to win the division right now, it is the Saints for that reason. It's QB play. Mm-hmm. Derek Carr as a Raider, I loved him as a Chiefs fan because we pretty much always beat him. But this division has a lot of question marks at the quarterback position, which is why it's so wide open. I will say that the Falcons have a really good schedule to start the season off. So if Desmond Ridder, and they're going to run the ball a ton, and they do have the depth at running back, and they have obviously Bijan. And so you look at this team and you're like, man, there's a lot of pieces that I like here too, even skill position wise. Cordell Patterson, if he hasn't, age caught up with him, he's still there. So I don't know.
And then you look at the flip side of the ball, though.
And the defense is pretty bad. But look at the quarterbacks. They're going to have to, play 6
games. Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, okay.
But that defense is so putrid.
I know. Yeah, it is.
There's
bad.
They didn't do really anything to address it. And then on top of that, you trade Deion Jones and a couple other guys off this team. You even traded Deion Jones within division, I'm pretty sure. I want to say he's with Carolina, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me see. I don't remember.
But, yeah, the pass rush for the Falcons, is a big question. The corner opposite of A.J. Terrell, they go out and trade for Jeff Okudah. Well, now Jeff Okudah's hurt already, which, no shock there. I am a big fan of Clark Phillips, but I don't know if he can play an outside corner position in the NFL, being 5'9". I think he's more suited for the slot corner. And so I feel like you could have done a little bit more on the defensive side. And if you would have, you probably have the better odds of winning this division with your schedule. And you got Bijan, you got Drake London, you got Kyle Pitts, who I think will be better if Desmond Ridder can actually get him the football. And you've got a solid offensive line.
Yeah. Is there a team that you're most excited to watch? Like if you were watching Sunday Ticket and you're like, well, Packers are on the afternoon game, so I'll watch this team. Like, which one are you most likely to watch?
I mean, I'll probably turn on Bryce Young just because I want to see what the young guy can do.
I gotcha. No
see
Baker.
if he gets out there.
Fine. No Baker.
I mean, it's nothing against Baker. It's just that's not an exciting team.
It is. Who's their running back this year?
Rashad White.
And then who else?
Rashad White.
Okay, yeah. Dude, it's so bad. Oh, man, poor Baker. He has an uphill battle again. He's just been dealt bad hands. He's the all-time.
He really has.
He's just got bad hands, okay?
I mean, end up in Cleveland, you get them to the playoffs, win game,
and they're like,
we'll pass.
I know you beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs, but we don't want any of it. Mm-mm.
Yeah. And then the whole situation with Carolina, and then you trade the running back, and he gets hurt, then you cut him. Yeah, it's just, I mean, come on, Baker. Do us proud.
Yeah, I think that's what I would probably stick with, too. So let's go ahead and move over to Baker Mayfield's former division, the NFC West. Yes, that is right. He did play with the Los Angeles Rams last year. So we got the Rams, Cardinals, 49ers, and Seahawks. 49ers, just in case anybody didn't know, Brock Purdy was cleared to throw. So that's good because they were going into the season like, my gosh, we might have to start Trey Lance but when Sam Darnold gets hurt. And if that is your picks, man. But this team got probably some of the best skill positions players. The best stretch receiver, the best slot receiver, one of the best tight ends. Not the best. I mean, Travis Kelce. Yeah. And then the running back, CMC, like they are set up to help Brock Purdy succeed. Like just flat out.
Yeah, and Shanahan's system is so, quarterback friendly that it's hard for a quarterback to fail. Man, I still have my reservations with Brock Purdy. I understand what he did last year. The 8-game stretch was a great 8-game stretch. But you played one defense outside of the Eagles, the 2 snaps or whatever it was that you played. You played one defense with inside the top 15. And that was the Dallas Cowboys. And you looked bad in that game as, the quarterback. The reason why you won is because you had Christian McCaffrey and the Cowboys had a 25th ranked rush defense.
Yeah.
And so I want to see what happens when he plays tougher defenses. Is he the same guy? Is he able to lead your team, to wins? And that's why I have my reservations. And so if he isn't, then what happens now? Because they basically gave up on Trey Lance. They tried to trade him at the draft. No one was biting. You bring in Sam Darnold. Is he the next option if, say, Purdy doesn't work out, or maybe he's just not quite healthy, the elbow's not feeling right or something, and he ends up missing an extended period? There's some questions there. If Purdy or whatever happens, that quarterback situation, there's questions what happens with the 49ers going forward. You have a great defense. You have incredible skill position players. But if something is wrong with Purdy, is Darnold or Lance going to be able to get you to the playoffs or even be a contender in the NFC? And I have, big questions because I'm not a Trey Lance guy either, and I'm not a Sam Darnold guy. So I just there's some questions at the quarterback position if Brock Purdy if he doesn't come out and he's not playing like he was, what happens there with that team?
Yeah. Well, and then you have another team like Seattle Seahawks with these great throwback uniforms, but they still have Geno Smith.
Yeah.
Geno Smith last year so in his 1+ year, he has 21 games played. I think 20 games started with the Seahawks. And he has, that time, he has 35 touchdowns. In his entire career, that's 10 years, 35 with the Seahawks. In his other 8 years, how many touchdowns does he have?
Oh, geez. There was a big period where he didn't really take any snaps at all.
Yep.
Then, his career with the Jets was unfeeling. I'll say 17. And I feel like that's high.
It wasn't high. But I like the guess at the very least. His first 2 years with New York, he only had 25.
Okay.
But total, he had 25, 27, 29. 29 outside this. So I'm just saying, once you I'm this way with baseball too. Like at some point, you're 32 years old. We know who you are, right? Like we know your skill set. We know it's so stinking hard to just get to that point that late in your career to where it clicks. I think. Yeah. I mean, he didn't have to wait that long, but I think Alex Smith was a good example of this. We thought maybe Jared Goff was like this, but he got there quicker. I just don't see it with Geno taking 10 years to get there, and then this is the expectation. Last year, he had 4,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 picks. He was a top 10 QBR quarterback. I would push him closer to more of a 3,500 yards this year, 21 touchdowns, 13 picks. Pretty stinking close to what he used to do, and probably maybe 7 yards for each pass attempt, which is closer to his high before.
Yeah, I think so too. I think what we saw towards the end of the season was teams had more film on him. I mean, you look at the gap besides the few games he played the year before when Russell Wilson got hurt. You look at the gap of the years that you really didn't have to worry about or have tape on Geno Smith, and now. Towards the end of the season, we saw teams defending them different, and he was struggling. They snuck into the playoffs, and I think that's something we'll see this year where teams know how to defend him, and we'll see them regress. We'll see him regress a decent amount. I mean, even with the targets around him with Lockett and Metcalf and JSN and Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, I still feel like Geno, we're going to see him be Geno.
Yeah. Though, speaking of what you're talking about, his last 2 months, December and January, month plus, he had his yards per attempt went down, which again, people don't know this. This is one of the biggest indicators of how successful a quarterback is going to be. You're not going to see Patrick Mahomes be successful and have a yards per attempt average at 6.8. It just doesn't happen. You got to be more than that. And his last 2 months went down to 6.8 and 6.6 in his touchdowns and interceptions. I mean, he had 11 and 6. I don't know. It's pretty close to what I just said earlier, at 21 and 13, but okay.
But, I mean, you think about it, 11 and 6, basically half your interceptions were in the final 2 months of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, and when it's called in crunch time and playoff time when each and every single game matters. I think – so those who are big into hey, I love it. I'm excited about Geno Smith. I'm going to draft him in fantasy football. Just be aware. The guy's been in the league for 10 years, and 1 year's been good. And
then on top of that, he just got paid. How much more motivated is he going to be to get that much better? Because now he's got the payday.
Yeah.
And we see this a lot where these guys have these big years in their contract, years, and then the next year come out and just fall flat on their face. And that's very well something that could happen with Geno Smith.
Yeah. Well, Matthew Stafford over across the way, I almost said the state, but it's a little further away than that. How many games does he play this year?
Man.
I mean, but what's crazy is before this year, the last year was 2019, was when he didn't play a full season. And then before 2019, it was 2010. So this dude had 10 years, essentially, of, no, I'm balling out every single game. I'm out there. And then now we're starting to see something, with obviously the elbow. And so that's my question is, how many games do you get out of him? Because if you don't have him, Stetson Bennett's your backup. And at best, Stetson Bennett is going to be Brock Purdy.
You hope he's Brock Purdy.
Yeah, Brock Purdy or maybe Mac Jones.
yeah, you hope he puts up the numbers that Brock Purdy put up last year. But yeah, this is tough because you got an aging quarterback who has elbow issues on his throwing hand, which doesn't sound like a recipe for success. So I mean, I don't know. The offensive line issues scare me with them. That was the big reason why. I mean, that guy took so many hits just in the few games he played last year. I mean, the hits he was taking were brutal hits. And so, man, you got to hope, I think you can get at least, 12, 13 games out of the guy. And I don't know if he can make it if that offensive line can't hold up.
Yeah, he is 1 year removed from 4,800 yards, 41 touchdowns, and 8 yards per attempt. Last year it was half the season, didn't even put up half the numbers. And so I think you are seeing him come towards the end a little bit quicker. I hope for his sake it's not, because love Matt Stafford. Dude's awesome. Yeah. Dude's a lot of fun to watch. He's a gunslinger. He's a competitor. If they can't figure out how to run the ball better, then it's going to make them too one-dimensional. I think you're right about that. Mm-hmm. And this team is not built to do that. But Cooper Kupp, hopefully he's back. Do you think Cooper Kupp is more likely to be healthy all year long? I know they shut him down towards the end of last year. They're like, you know what, forget it. We're not doing anything. We're just going to go ahead and have surgery now. Because it was pretty bad. But is this a bounce back year for him?
I think it is, but I mean, we've already seen him get dinged up during practice, during training camp. So, I mean, he has had a history of injuries.
Yep.
Up until that that 1 year where he stayed completely healthy and put up those, monstrous numbers. But I mean, if he can stay healthy, yeah, you've got that. If not, we're looking at the same team last year where you got Van Jefferson as your number one wide receiver, or Tutu Atwell, who caught his first pass in the NFL last year, like week 14 or something like that. So it's one of those situations. If Cam Akers flops like he did last year at the beginning of the season, we're looking at a team that can't run the football and is going to throw the football 50 times, and Matthew Stafford's going to be on the ground probably half of those times.
Yeah. Give me Cooper Kupp's stat line for the year. What do you think
it'll be? Is this based off – am I basing it off whether I think he's going to stay healthy, or is this based off – I'll say he'll play 15 games.
Okay.
And I think, based off of the target share is going to be massive for him. And so we'll say he has 106 receptions, which, I mean, pretty decent, to about 10 catches.
Yeah, that's about
right. 1,500 yards and 8 touchdowns.
How many times in his career has he gone over 1,500 yards?
Once.
How many times has he gone over 1,200 yards?
Once.
How many times has he gone over 1,000 yards?
I'm guessing once.
Twice.
Twice.
I know. I got you there. How many years has he been in the league? The dude's 30.
Mm-hmm.
I am more along the lines like, man, I'm nervous. Like, fantasy-wise, 2 times has he had more than 6 touchdowns. One was a monster season, obviously, and the other one was the same year he had 1,000 in 2019. I am more along the lines that the dude's going to end up hopefully 15 games, hopefully 90 catches, hopefully 1,000 yards, but more likely 6 to 7 touchdowns. Like, that's statistically what we've seen him do in the past. Now, yes, he had Matthew Stafford for one of those years, was a monster compared to when he had Jared Goff. But all I'm saying here is that you just like I just look at your resume, and this is what I'm seeing. I love Cooper Kupp. I think he's an incredible wide receiver. I'm nervous about the injuries, and so fantasy-wise, probably didn't come with fantasy advice, but I'm here giving you some.
Yeah. My biggest thing is that the target share is going to be huge, because outside of him, you really don't have any other wide receiver on that team. Van Jefferson's a decent, wide receiver, but he's a wide receiver 3 or 4 at best.
Yeah.
And so the target share is probably going to be the highest in the NFL, or right up there with the highest, top 3. So it's going to be somewhere around the 27-28% target share, if not higher. And I think if he's able to stay healthy, those numbers will be big, because it's going to be the only guy that Matthew Stafford is going to really be able to throw the football to.
Yeah. So take all what I said with a grain of I'm going to catch the ball.
Oh no, I agree. I think it's a very risky play, especially where his average draft position is, top 10, 12 picks, he's usually in the middle of that
High
first
risk,
round,
right?
5th, 6th, 7th, pick in the draft. So yeah, there's absolutely is either you're completely sold on the guy or you're hesitant and you're shifting to you're taking Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill or something like that around that draft position.
Yeah. So you got to pick a winner. Who's going to win this division?
I mean, I'm going to say the 49ers just because I think they have the most complete team.
Yep.
If Brock Purdy or whoever the quarterback is can be halfway competent, it's going to be hard for them to lose this division.
Yeah. I think if I'm going to pick a dark horse, it's going to be Seattle, but I would also obviously pick San Francisco. So,
yeah.
Let's move over to everyone's least favorite division of football. Can you guess what it is? The NFC East, the one that we don't care about. So we got the Cowboys, Giants, Eagles, and the Commanders. Commanders under new ownership. Is this the start of a new time period, a new regime? But obviously you got the NFC champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. So who do you got as the early favorite for this one?
I think it's the Eagles. The Jalen Hurts. I think Swift is a sneaky play this year if he can stay healthy. But you got Rashad Penny, a bunch of guys. I don't think that he's going to have to put up. I don't think he's going to have to be on the field as much as he was up in Detroit the last few years, outside of the goal line touches when Jamal Williams stole him last year. I don't know if the tread will come off the tires as fast early on for him. And you got A.J. Brown, you got Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts. You got arguably the best offensive line in NFL. My biggest question is, did they do enough in the offseason to shore up the middle of that defense? You lose 2 or 3 guys off in the middle of the defensive line. You lost 2 starting linebackers. You lost a couple of safeties. Did you do enough?
Draft a couple of Georgia Bulldogs. You'll be fine.
Yeah. They did. But those guys have to step up. You got to have a big season out of Jordan Davis. Jalen Carter's going to have to be what everyone thought he was when it went into the draft, that he was automatically going to be ready for the NFL. Nakobe Dean, he basically had a redshirt year. Can he show up and be that guy? And now you've got some younger guys in that safety position trying to replace Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Sidney Brown and a couple other guys. Can they show up and be good enough? I think NFC wise, it's not going to be hard for them to be the best team just because there's not a whole lot about the NFC I think they should be worried about, but one of those teams is in their division that they're going to have to be somewhat worried about.
Yeah, 4 of their 6 division games, the Eagles have all come in the last 5 weeks. So they have a chance to beat up the teams in the division to really close out the year. And I think this team is a very physical team, and they do have a lot of weapons on offense and on defense. And so I would put them. They're not going to have the same season record-wise I think they had last year, but I would see this team as a 12-13 win team that should challenge to win it. Because if you look at the other team that a lot of people are going to, I think, will want to pick, is naturally the Cowboys. Everybody loves the Dallas Cowboys. They love Dak Prescott. I think he's the best. Tony Pollard. A lot of people are loving Tony Pollard this year with no more Zeke to kind of, I guess, pull him back a little bit or just put him in the shell. And then you have CeeDee Lamb. But I think if you look at this team, there are a couple injuries, 1 or 2 key injuries away from, this team is going to struggle to get to 500. Dak Prescott last year obviously had the injuries. But what I loved about seeing that was CeeDee Lamb is looking like he could be QB proof. Like, he is just that good.
Yeah.
And then if Tony Pollard, if he can stay healthy, it should at least have some weapons. Dalton Schultz is gone. They got a new tight end, and then obviously the wide receivers are okay. I think we're starting to see that they don't have a clear number 2. They have a couple 2Bs or 3s.
So they brought in Brandon Cooks, so I think that helps out.
Yeah.
Brandon did have a down year compared to what he's been able to do somehow in Houston without anyone. But yeah, I know a lot of people are like, oh man, they're just so loaded. Anytime I see Mike McCarthy being the play caller for the season, I feel like offensive wise, you're going to struggle more than you would expect with what you have on that offensive side, because I don't think he's evolved his game. It's kind of like the Tony La Russa situation where he took the year off, between getting fired and getting the job in Dallas to rework his offensive scheme. But we saw that offensive scheme with Kellen more. And it was, a good offense, but not a good enough offensive scheme to win the game when you needed to win those games. And I don't think you did enough on the defensive side to shore up the biggest problem on that defense, which was the run defense. You were 25th, 24th, 25th in run defense last year. You go out and get Mozzie Smith, who is supposed to be considered a run stuffer, but out of all the high-end defensive tackles in that draft, he had the slowest reaction time off the snap of the ball, made the least amount of plays behind the line of scrimmage. And so I don't think that translates too well to being a run stuffer in the NFL, especially when you're going to get up against offensive lines like the Eagles, a couple of times a year, and an improved Giants offensive line, I think, this year. I feel like you didn't do enough in teams that can actually run the football. Saquon Barkley. You got Gibson and Robinson in Washington. You've got Swift, Penny, Gainwell in Philadelphia that you have to contend with now. And the one thing that I find absolutely hilarious is that everyone was like, oh, we just need to give Tony Pollard the ball. We need Tony Pollard the ball. Well, now everyone's like, well, we need another running back. We don't have running backs. We're freaking out because all we have is Tony Pollard. Well, I thought that's all you needed was Tony Pollard. Everyone was all in on the Tony Pollard train, but now they're like, oh, well, we need someone to supplement him because he can't, like you're trying to say, he can't be the bell cow back. So which is it? Is he a top running back in the NFL, or do you need someone that's going to be there to supplement him? I mean, yeah, it's great to have two running backs, but you guys are acting like he was being held back so much by Zeke, but now you're trying to bring in, you guys are wanting to, Dalvin Cook, or even I've seen them possibility of bringing back Zeke, Kareem Hunt. We need someone else. And I'm like, well, which is it?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, and I think that was my biggest frustration last year with the Cowboys was just everyone was all about it, and we both talked about it, how they couldn't stop the run, and in the playoffs, that's going to be a huge deal, and that's obviously what kind of bit in the butt was just stopping the run. And Micah Parsons, as good as he is at running the ball or at attacking the passer, if you run the ball right where he's going, he's already past it because he only had. That was his game. And so maybe this offseason he has made a couple of adjustments. He's tweaked a lot, and he has actually found himself with a couple new moves to help defend the run better. And that could be a big selling point if he can do that because he can be a game changer. But I don't know if he can do it.
Now you got a situation where he moved from linebacker to basically defensive end edge. Yeah. And so now he's not going to be moving around the field. And does that take away from his versatility and his disruptiveness? Maybe, because now if you're just putting him on the edge, he's not making all these, blitzes from the middle linebacker position and stuff like that. So does it, somewhat handicap him? I would hope not, because Micah Parsons is an exciting player to watch play football because he's just that big of a freak athlete. And he is someone that even if you hate the Cowboys, you like to see him play because he makes the game of football exciting. So what happens there? Because if that's the case, I mean, I'm running at him every single time until he stops the run.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a running back division. Like if you look at even the Commanders, I still really like Brian Robinson. Everyone has just completely just said, oh yeah, Brian Robinson. Yeah, we forgot about him since last year. Yeah. And so they had him. Obviously, Barkley signed the massive 1-year deal with the Giants. Tony Pollard's obviously on the same team, but you look at this team and the Eagles have Jalen Hurts already, and you said it, DeAndre Swift. I think he's the sneaky guy this year that could make a huge, huge difference. So this is a team this is a division you have to. You got 6 games against these guys, and you have some good quarterbacks too. So you're just gonna have to, and because Daniel Jones can run the ball, Jalen Hurts can run the ball. Sam Howell. Hopefully, if they are going to give him any opportunity, the dude can run the ball. So just let him run the ball.
Yep.
I'm just saying you're 100% right. We'll have to see what happens. When you break down this division, does this division have what you expect to be the NFC champion this year?
Yeah, I would think that the Eagles are the NFC. They should represent them, but on paper, they should be the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl. But we've seen it's hard to get back to the Super Bowl after you've lost in consecutive years. There's not very many teams that can do that. So, would I be surprised if some other team popped up and made a run? No, just because, we never know until towards the end of the season. Some team may get hot and just make that run towards the playoffs and throughout the playoffs. And I mean, on paper, the Eagles should be that team. And
so on paper, they should be. I have one that I'm gonna pick as the 1B team. Like, I don't think on paper, but I'm gonna pick them this year because it's an open NFC. I'll get to that in a second. But who in this division has the biggest opportunity to challenge the Eagles?
So I mean, a lot of people are saying the Cowboys. I'm not quite there because there's a lot of things. I think the Giants have a potential. I think that their defense could be better this year than it was last year. They had a lot of injuries. If those guys stay healthy, I think Daniel Jones has shown the ability that he has improved every year. The interception rate has gone down. The completion percentage has gone up. You got Saquon Barkley back. You brought in a few, possible targets for him on the outside. I think that this is a team that could possibly push the Eagles. Do I think they win? Probably not, but I think that
they could push.
They may. Yeah, I think they could push them.
Well, they can't get worse targets.
No. I mean,
do you like his new nickname, by the way?
I don't. What's the new nickname?
Because Danny Dimes was the original, and now it's Danny Dollars.
Danny Dollars.
Since he got that contract, it's Danny Dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like them. I think if they're not going to win, I would pick the Giants to be a good wild card team too in that division. The Cowboys probably make a wild card too because it's an open one.
Yeah.
And I don't trust the quarterback play enough in the Commanders to fill in the gap, even though they have some really good playmakers. They really do have good playmakers.
I mean, I'm in on the Sam Howell hype train, but this is going to be his first full season. And I don't like the whole regime with Ron Rivera and offensive play calling and stuff there. I'm just not a big fan of it. And I feel like that may hold him back a little bit. Like I said, you got the targets. The defense on paper should be better than it was the year before after a very disappointing defense that they put out there. Bring Chase Young back. You got Emmanuel Forbes, first-round pick, Kendall Fuller. You got the pieces there to be a good defense. Now it's whether or not you can go out there and do it. I just don't know if – I think Ron Rivera and Turner are going to hold him back when it comes to play calling and stuff.
Yeah. Well, so the other team that I have as a dark horse or a 1B team in this outside of the 49ers, I guess. The 49ers, Brock Purdy stays healthy. They are set up to be able to do it because of the team overall. Anyway, going back to the other team we haven't talked about yet is the Minnesota Vikings. I think Kirk Cousins is going to have the opportunity this year to make that happen. Like, make a play to win the division. I think that they are the team to beat in the NFC North this year. If you look at them, they still have Justin Jefferson. The running back has a little bit of a question mark right now, but I just think we talk about this as a quarterback run league. If you look at it on paper right now, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC. And I think that said, should on paper, in theory, make something happen that could possibly happen. I'll just put it like that in those parameters.
My biggest thing coming into with this division, I think it's another division that can be absolutely wide open. The NFC there's the NFC South, and NFC North to me are the two hardest divisions to pick in all football because there's so much questions around a lot of the teams. I mean, we look at the Vikings where they won 13 games last year, 14 games, but 11 of those were in one. They were 11-0 in one possession games. Now, if you flip that to what it was the year before, where they only won like 2, we're looking at a 7-8 win team. And that's where I'm like, what do we get, when it comes to Kirk Cousins? They got 5 primetime games. We know what Kirk Cousins does in primetime games. He doesn't show up. So I'm like, can you automatically mark maybe, 3 or 4 losses right there because he doesn't show up when it comes to primetime games? And I don't know if I think defensive-wise, they've gotten worse. I don't think that they improved at all because now you're trying to trade Danielle Hunter, and now you trade him. What do you have pass rush-wise? You signed Marcus Davenport, who had a half a sack last year. And Byron Murphy helps, in the secondary, but you've got no one else opposite side of him. Your linebacker group has gotten worse. I feel like you've gotten worse in a lot of positions. Can Madison be the guy? There's questions, whether or not this injury is, more serious than it was. If that's the case, now you got Ty Chandler, where you got Dwayne McBride, the rookie running back out of UAB, or Kene Nwangu, who's also hurt now. And then opposite of Justin Jefferson, can Jordan Addison step up and be that number 2? Or is can KJ Osborne step up and be that number 2? I think there's a lot of questions here with them, like there is a lot of the teams in the NFC North right now.
Yeah, no, there definitely are, but I will say they have all the weapons around. They have the tools. The biggest thing that I've seen with Kirk Cousins, other than primetime games, is just when he plays outdoors. He's so good indoors, but when he plays outdoors, at least recently, it's been where he turns the ball over more, and that's the hardest thing to overcome, especially if you're doing it on the road. And they're not going to be playing inside at home, so that's the other part about it, or outside at home. So, but if I look at this division, Jared Goff. How good is he going to be this year? Jahmyr Gibbs, is he going to be able to do all the things that they want him to, because they don't have Jamal Williams anymore. They also don't have DeAndre Swift. And so the running back room is much, much different this year. They still have great skill positions with Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Packers with Jordan Love. He's just a huge question mark, although there's a lot of similarities in the storyline and the timeline to Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. We don't know if it's going to work out the same. But at least to his credit, he's going to have something that nobody else does in the last couple of years. That's playing quarterback this year, and he's been able to sit behind one of the best quarterbacks. And look at the track record of how that has worked out for some of these quarterbacks recently. Now, again, it happens few and far between, because most of the time when these guys get drafted, they're on teams that are terrible, and so they got to play C.J. Stroud, they got to play Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson. But this is a luxury that they have, similar to what the Chiefs had with Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying he's going to be Patrick Mahomes, but I'm saying that I wouldn't be if he comes out and he's really, really good, I wouldn't be as surprised, because he's had so long to study. So the up in the air quarterbacks could be the best division of quarterbacks in the NFC, could be the worst. We don't know. I think it could be the NFC North, because Justin Fields could take a massive step this year. Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins, so we know he's going to put up the numbers. Jordan Love could be great, and Jared Goff could have another year like he did last year. That's wide open. You're not kidding about a wide open division.
Yeah, I mean, this is one. I mean, especially as a Packers fan, as a Packers fan, I think that they have a great chance to be better than a lot of people are giving. I mean, there's a lot of people think they are the worst team in the division because of what they saw from Jordan Love, his first preseason, or whatever, is one start against the Chiefs. That's not the same Jordan Love that is there. And on top of that, I'm hoping the defense is what I thought it was last year. I hope it is that defense this year. You got a lot of guys coming back. You got Eric Stokes. I think Wyatt is going to take a big step forward in the middle to give Kenny Clark some help in the interior part of that defensive line. Rashawn Gary's way ahead of schedule. Sounds like he may even play week 1 now. You throw Lucas Van Ness in there. You got solid linebacker play in Campbell and Quay Walker. You got good corners. The one thing on defense that I'm worried about is the safety position when it comes to, you got Darnell Savage, and he wasn't great last year, and we don't know who the other guy is.
Yeah.
But Jordan Love, for him, at least he's got two big things going for him on the offensive side. Is you've got two really good running backs, and you've got a really good offensive line. And it seems like he already has that relationship with the young receivers that Aaron Rodgers didn't have at all last year with these guys. So I think if he has the numbers that Rodgers put up his first NFL season, I think they win the division. 25 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. To me, I think of that as a plus compared to what I think a lot of people are expecting him to have, 15 touchdowns, maybe, 12, 13 interceptions, maybe more. And I think that he's better than a lot of people are really thinking about. I still don't think that they are the team to beat in this division. I'm actually going to go with the Lions. I know this, and I've argued this myself, in my head, I don't know how many times, is that you're basing this off of Jared Goff being the guy where he only had one interception in the second half of the season. I don't think that happens. I'm not saying that, but
unrealistic.
But I feel like that maybe he's found something within this system and with Dan Campbell and the offense coordinator where he feels like he doesn't have to push to be the best player like he did when Sean McVay, who was that quarterback signature, quarterback first type of offense coordinator. And he's settled into his role in Detroit. David Montgomery is not a slouch when it comes to running back. So you got David Montgomery, at least if Jahmyr Gibbs isn't ready to be the bell cow back Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a huge threat coming out of the backfield in the passing game. You got him on St. Brown. I'm a big fan of Sam Laporta. I think he's just basically a younger version of TJ Hawkinson. My biggest question is, man, you did nothing in that secondary.
I know. And then and that's the hard part too, is the Vikings, they got the talent at receiver. Addison, you mentioned earlier. I think Addison will overtake Osborne by the end of the year as the overall number 2. He should. I think he has the talent level.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're going to have to. I mean, even the Bears upgraded at the wide receiver position this year, and I think you're going to see that it's going to be a competitive division. I hope that at the end of the year, you look at this division and you're like, this is the best quarterback division in the NFC, just because that would mean that Jordan Love worked out. Justin Fields would work out, which would be great for our friend Joseph and his Bear fandom. And your dad. Your dad loves the Bears. I'm sure he wants them to just kind of figure it out. And he did make a huge step forward last year. But yeah, the Vikings are the team that I think I'm going to pick to win the division, just because they had the best floor quarterback. Doesn't necessarily mean the best ceiling quarterback, but the best floor quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they do absolutely have the best quarterback in the NFC North right now. As we're talking right now, he's obviously had. Yeah. I mean, and I'm not saying it's Jordan Love. I think there's a very good chance that. I mean, if I was Justin Fields, the one thing I would have done this offseason was call up Jalen Hurts and be like, "Hey, can we work out together?" Because what he did from year 2 to year 3 100%. Is what the Bears are needing Justin Fields to do, and I think he has every ability to do that. I just don't. I mean, I hope that they did enough on the offensive line to keep the guy upright enough to throw the football, because you went out and you got DJ Moore, you've got Darnell Mooney, you got Claypool, who are decent number 2, number 3. You got Cole Kmet, who is a solid, tight end.
Sneaky.
I think Foreman is a sleeper running back. We saw what he's done the last couple of years. I think Roschon Johnson, though, is the guy I think at the end of the season who will be that big-time running back. I think they got a steal in him in the 4th round. Mm-hmm. Defense is still, I think there's some questions secondary-wise. Can Jalen Johnson become what he was his rookie year? I like Tyreek Stevenson as, the corner opposite of him. But, man, if Justin Fields can take a step forward, this is how wide open this division is. There's a chance that we could see the team that won this division be the worst team in this division, just because it's so wide open and all of these schedules are so winnable for each team. Mm-hmm. Because the NFC North, the NFC South, and the AFC South all got off really easy when it came to schedule-wise, because they weren't as good as the NFC East and the AFC West and the NFC West. Yeah, and so you're getting these, you're getting the easier part of the schedule. So I think there's a chance that we could just see absolute chaos in this division. And I don't think the Bears can win it, but it depends. I mean, man, if Justin Fields has a big season, he's going to put himself in that conversation.
It's in the chat. Greg, you said he needs to settle down and trust his O-line, not take off running. Are you talking about Justin Fields? Put that in the chat. I'm just curious. He might be saying that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for that guy is he didn't have much of an opportunity to settle down, because honestly,
the offensive line was pretty bad.
If you look at the numbers, really, he actually, out of a lot of the NFL quarterbacks, he had more time to throw the football, but it was the fact that, one, he didn't have guys on the outside to catch the football, and also on top of that, when there was a lot of times where it was just blown blocking assignments, and he had younger guys along that offensive line. You got Braxton Jones, will be his second year in the NFL, who I think shown the ability to be a decent, solid left tackle. It's the interior part of that offensive line that I have more worries about, because I think Darnell Wright can be a good, solid rookie on the right side, but it's the interior part of that offensive line that, if you face a team with good interior defensive linemen, is where he's going to have the biggest problem with the rush coming straight at his face and not off the edges.
Yeah, and that can blow your vision really quick. But I will say that if you're going to – it's easier to find interior offensive line typically than it is the outside. Well, the ones that are better than at least league average. Now, I will say, Greg, man, you were one of the best out there. So you do have that offensive line heart, and I appreciate that, man. Thank you for repping in the show today in the chat. But, yes, so I don't know. I really hope that this division is one of the most exciting ones. Plus, the Lions get a Monday Night Football game against the Vikings, like second to last week. It's like the last week of the season that Monday Night Football happens. The Lions.
They sold out season tickets this year.
Good for them, dude. They deserve it, okay?
But that's one big thing that worries me too, is can they live up to the hype? I mean, everyone is, this is the darling team, and I get it. What they did last year, I did not expect. I don't think anyone expected them to be. And
part of
way
that's
Jared Goff,
though, that the coach talked about it.
Absolutely. Dan Campbell, it has built something there that, and I think it has really put Jared Goff at ease. That he trusts him, unlike I think McVay. McVay was never really behind him, except for the year they went to the Super Bowl, and then the next season it was basically like, well, I need someone else. I can't work with this guy. I need someone that can actually throw the football. And
he for sure trusted him more. McVay trusted Goff more than Fisher trusted Goff.
Yeah, definitely.
He's like, I don't even know why we drafted this guy for number 1 overall.
Yeah. Then Carson Wentz, what number 2, number 3?
Oh man, that was not an age problem. At least the Rams don't pick the right one. Which we didn't. I don't think either of us really liked Carson Wentz back then.
Oh no, I was not a fan of Carson Wentz. No.
I mean, you're repping his team colors right now, but yeah, you.
I mean, that was college. This is NFL.
I know. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
No.
Well, that's pretty much the show. That's when it comes down to NFC. We're going to continue breaking down the NFL. We'll have our full predictions episode. See, here's the thing. We're also not going to set in stone, take receipts and all that kind of stuff about who our predictions are, because the preseason's happened. We've already had lots of injuries. And so we want to be able to have the full slate of cards in our hand before we make those predictions. And just so we look a little less foolish when I pick the Cardinals to win the NL this year.
Hey, we both were right there. So
it hurts. It stings.
Yeah.
It's personal.
I mean,
so go ahead.
I did go out on the limb, really the first time ever. I picked the Packers to win the Super Bowl last year, and what happens?
It's true.
Don't even make playoffs. So I know the pain. I know the pain.
It sucks. It hurts. But man, we appreciate everyone joining us today, listening. Whether you listen to the podcast, we download it on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever in the world you listen to them outside of Apple Podcasts. I don't know what people listen to outside of Apple. Who doesn't have an iPhone? Come on. But it's fine. We appreciate you listening. Or if you join us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, we really, really appreciate all the support today, and just jump in the chat with the questions, with the ideas. And we cannot wait till next week, because we're going to be breaking down all that's coming whether it's Cal and Stanford headed to the ACC. The ACC is gone under. Whatever it is, we'll be talking about it, as well as the AFC, home of the Super Bowl champions. Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, best conference in football. I mean,
it is right.
We got a lot to talk about, because I mean, there's some teams in the AFC to really talk about. Except unless you're the Jaguars, the only team in the NFC South that is worth talking about.
That's true. Hey, a lot of quarterbacks there, a lot of new quarterbacks in that division. So anyway, we will see y'all next week, but thank you so much again. See ya.